Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 300 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Now, in this special 300th episode, I'm going to talk about a common topic that comes up with thoughtful leaders in particular, and that is, how do I deal with strong personalities in my workplace? So I've got 5 tips for you in this big 300th episode. Let's get into it right now. So no matter where you work, there's a good chance you're going to have to deal with strong personalities in your workplace. People with strong personalities can cause feelings of stress, frustration, and fear for those that they work with. So are people with strong personalities bad, and should they be banished from the workplace? Well, of course, no, not really. They just bring a different style that can actually be beneficial in the right situation. So in this episode, I'm going to look at some of these tips for dealing with strong personalities in your particular workplace. Now, firstly, it's a bit of a vague term. So what does a strong personality mean? Well, it can mean a few different things. So let's narrow it down. So I define them as being direct communicators. So they don't beat around the bush. People with strong personalities often get straight to the point and say what they mean. I find strong personalities are often backed by a results focus. Strong personalities often like to move fast, and people like to get things done to achieve their goals. So they're really focused on results, which can mean they seem quite forceful because they want to get to the answer. They want to get the job done. And strong personality can also be quite dominant. They may try to dominate the people around them, might speak over quieter people, or use an aggressive or loud tone of voice to emphasize a point. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're inconsiderate or aggressive or bad people. It may be that they're so focused on getting the job done or getting to the outcome that they actually come across quite bluntly. And of course, all these traits can cause issues because a lot of people do consider them to be disrespectful or blunt, aggressive, or inconsiderate as well. So in general, people who listen to my podcast and read my articles don't really fall into the strong personality category. Instead, you're more likely to be a thoughtful, people-focused leader if you're listening to this. Now, as a result, the thought of someone being loud, dominant, or aggressive probably annoys and frustrates you. But diversity is a good thing, and we need to be able to work with different types of people rather than to shy away from them. So let's look at some ways we can work with strong personalities a little bit better. My first tip for you is not to try direct confrontation. So there's a few reasons why I usually don't suggest we try to directly go toe-to-toe with a strong personality. And the reason is that if you're a thoughtful leader, your style is probably not suited to being direct and forceful. So as a result, it won't come naturally to you, and you may actually overcompensate. Now, I remember a time at work when I knew I was going to be dealing with someone quite dominant. So what do you think I did? Well, I tried to be really direct with them myself, thinking, well, they can handle it. And actually, I sort of went too far with it, and they just thought I was being rude because I overcompensated and went overboard because it wasn't really my natural style. And we don't want that. We need to remember that people with strong personalities are still people, and we don't want to steamroll them or really act harshly to them when we don't need to. Another reason I recommend against direct confrontation is because the other person, if they're a strong personality, they're probably going to be better at direct confrontation than you are. They've lived their whole life as a dominant, forceful presence. They've practiced it a lot, and their style probably has roots going all the way back to their upbringing. So it's likely you aren't going to win this battle. You'll probably feel bad about behaving in this way, whereas they'll probably feel quite comfortable. And lastly, direct confrontation between two strong personalities is more likely to be explosive and may damage relationships to the point where it's hard to work together. So do we just roll over and let them dominate us? Well, no, that's not what we want either. So let's keep going. And there's a related article you might want to check out as well 5 tips for quiet leaders. If you're in that category, check that out on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/300. On that show notes page as well, there's also a link there to my leadership coaching page. Now, if you're interested in potentially working one-on-one with me to solve your leadership challenges, build your confidence in leadership, then I am keen to hear from you. So click on that page, look at the link, and see if you want to book in a free 30-minute conversation where we can talk about how coaching might work for you. And by the way, working with strong personalities for thoughtful leaders is one of the most common things I work with people on with my coaching clients. All right, so let's move on to tip number 2, which is be prepared. Now, people with strong personalities like to win, and they may dominate others. And one way to prevent this from happening is to prepare for situations when you know you're going to have to deal with these types of people. For example, if you're dealing with a dominant executive who wants to know all about what's going on with your project, you need to be armed with information that they'll want to know. If you're making a case for new resources in your team and the approver has a strong personality, you'll want to make a good case. The good thing about dealing with a strong personality in these examples is that they'll probably tell you directly if they don't agree with you. Other less dominant people may keep it to themselves and then disagree with you later, telling others outside of the meeting or via email. So it's okay not to know everything, but you should aim to have a firm grasp of your topic and be able to speak about it confidently. So the next time you know you're going to be dealing with a strong personality, take 10 minutes to prepare for the interaction rather than just winging it. You may also consider visualizing the situation that you're going to be entering into. This might mean imagining yourself in a meeting with a strong personality, responding calmly when they show dominant behavior. Now, this can make your brain feel like you've been there before, and you're more likely to be able to respond better in the moment. And I'll put a link to a post on visualization in the show notes page as well. Now, the third tip I have for you is to be aware of the motivations of people with strong personalities. Now, I find that people who are direct and forceful are often motivated by achievement. This might mean money and being successful, or simply achieving their next goal. The directness of the strong personality does not necessarily come from a desire to hurt people or make them upset. It actually usually comes from a desire to get things done, to go faster, and to remove roadblocks. Or it may come from a place of deep insecurity, where a strong personality feels the need to dominate, to win, and protect their ego. However the person is motivated, you can use this to your advantage. If you think the person wants to achieve their goal, you can show them how working with you will help them to do that, or demonstrate how you're trying to remove the roadblocks that might stop them from getting what they want. I find that considering the motivations behind the strong personality helps me to take their interactions less personally. If you think they're just out to get you or they're being mean to you, you may react defensively or in anger, which probably won't help. And if you're one of those many people who say, "Oh, I wish I'd done that," after the interaction, structured reflection on each situation can be really helpful. So you can reflect on a conversation you had with a difficult person and see what you think you could have done better and how that interaction went. And you can actually use my Useful Thinking Journal to do that. It's a really good way of undergoing structured reflection. I'll put a link to the Useful Thinking Journal in the show notes page as well. That is thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/300. And by the way, if you enjoy this podcast, I would love you to give me a 5-star rating on your app of choice that you use to listen to podcasts. It helps me get the word out about the Thoughtful Leader podcast and helps other thoughtful leaders just like you find it. Thank you in advance. Let's move on to tip 4. Tip 4 is to adapt your approach to strong personalities. Now, you don't need to bow and scrape before a strong personality to stop them getting angry, but it's always worth thinking about what approach might make the interaction easier. So here are some suggestions for how you could adapt your approach. Now, the first one is get to the point. Don't talk about the weekend, just get to the task at hand. Sometimes strong personalities become frustrated by information they feel is irrelevant or waffling. The second thing I'd suggest is to bring facts. Strong personalities often speak in data and facts rather than emotions. So if you're making a claim, see if you can prove it with information or data. And I also think it can be useful to get their help. Strong personalities often come with a strong drive to achieve, and if you can give them a role to play in getting to the goal, their natural drive may come in really handy. Of course, it's up to you to decide how exactly to adapt your approach, depending on the situation and their specific style. And there's a related article that might be helpful for you about should you be yourself or adapt to your audience. I'll put that in the show notes page as well. The last tip I have for you in this episode about strong personalities is to raise awareness of bad behaviors. Now, when you're dealing with strong personalities, we don't want to go head to head with them, but we also don't want to become a pushover. So make sure you stand your ground. One way to do this is to understand what you'll stand for and what you won't. Now, when a strong personality oversteps the line using bad language or aggressive behavior, it's time to observe it and bring it to their attention. Sometimes I've found that people with strong personalities are not even aware of the way they're behaving, such as raising their voice or using an aggressive tone. So here are some simple examples of phrases that can help. You could say something like, "When you raise your voice like that, it feels disrespectful. Can we have a calm conversation about this?" Or you could say, "I noticed that you got a bit angry when we talked about that last point. What is it that bothers you about it?" Or you could say, "When you interrupt me, it's hard to explain my point. Please let me finish." You don't need to stick around if you're being treated poorly. Raising awareness of the issue without being angry or dominant yourself can actually be a powerful way of bringing them back down to earth because you're responding in a calm, controlled manner. You're keeping your composure, which is actually a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. So dealing with strong personalities is no walk in the park, and it can be extremely unpleasant, especially for thoughtful leaders, and some of which who may be on the quieter side of leadership. But we do need to work with all types of people, so being able to navigate strong personalities is critical. And I'd love to hear what you think about this topic. What ideas would you add for dealing with strong personalities, and what are some of the challenges you have? You can leave your thoughts on the show notes page, which was thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/300. I'd love to read what you think about that, and I can respond to them as well. Thank you once again for listening to this 300th episode. If you haven't already, as you might have guessed, there's 300 of these, so feel free to go back and listen to my back catalogue as well. It's been a pleasure bringing the Thoughtful Leader podcast to you, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not stopping just because I got to 300. All right. Thank you for listening once again. Leave a positive review on your app of choice if you can, and I'll be back next week.